Other movie I just watched this week, Send Help, which it's fun to see Sam Raimi in sort of that mid-budget tier again. I think he shines here, and Send Help features all of his trademarks. It's got wacky camera angles, wacky camera moves, jump scares. There's, some tongue-in-cheek gore that he throws in. My biggest and it's a like overall narratively it's a solid narrative, and I'll get to that. The biggest, I would say, complaint I have about Send Help is that it feels very overproduced, and this it's not necessarily specific to this movie. A lot of films, it's like they're lit just a little too well. Everything looks a little too clean, and doing that makes the screen look just a little bit too flat, like we're not actually there. You got a lot of shots where there's clearly just CG embellishment going on, and that's a lot of films. Like, all of the animals are computer animated, which I on some level, from a production standpoint, I do get. You don't have to deal with actual live animals, which is it's difficult to do. You don't have to deal with the Humane Society person on set. You can save money there if you're not actually having animals. You just, we're going to do it in post, so that's something you can eliminate. So practically, I get it, but they just don't blend into the environment. It's very clearly, you're looking at very clearly CG creations, and it takes me out of it. It removes a layer of being able to lose yourself in the world you're watching. And it's not just this specific movie, but it's most movies at this layer, which is sort of sort of mid-budget layer. It's just like almost a little too polished, um which is maybe a weird thing to complain about, but I'd love to see films just dirty it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like, we're going to go out of our way to make it less perfect. But on the narrative front, great lead performance from Rachel McAdams. What she does really well in it is that the film sets her up as this very like relatable, awkward, socially awkward person. She's under the boot heel of these sort of, Wall Street frat douchebags. But beyond that, it's not even just the work stuff. Even just the social stuff, where her coworkers are planning to do like the karaoke night, you know, by themselves, and she's clearly not invited, because everybody thinks finds her a little weird. Um, so she's very much this outcast person, and in through this plane crash and ending up on this island, finds this like almost like quasi peace, with not having to go back to this life where everybody thinks she sucks. And because of that, and you can really see why she ends up where she does, she morphs the character into sort of this really kind of scary villainous person who's essentially torturing a man, for the runtime of the film. And as an audience, we get it. It's like we get where she's coming from, but it's really challenging the audience to, like, you started this film wanting her to do, wanting her to do well, but the means by which she gets there is, it's like, this is not, this is straight up evil. And she's kind of a Looney Tune, and it's a very well done performance. I think Dylan O'Brien was not as strong, and this is where I think the movie fails a little bit, in that really he's, again, frat bro Wall Street guy who's, gives no craps about his employees. And really, this should have been some sort of reverse thing where we relate to her at the beginning, and like they do sort of one of these where by the end of it we feel bad for him. But because Wall Street guys are not really, people are not all that much of a fan of these guys, the film doesn't really go there with him. It never entertains the possibility that maybe he doesn't deserve what she does to him, and that I think is a little bit of a failing in the writing there. But otherwise, it I would say 3 out of 5. I was maybe a little more generous when I did my Instagram review. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5, but it is a solid 3. It is very entertaining, and I think Sam Raimi is better off. He's better off doing these original mid-budget things. It's you know, comic book superhero filmmaking is it's so corporate now, and it becomes very hard to be an auteur. Whereas when he did Spider-Man the first and Spider-Man the second, there was, I think, he loves that character, and I think at the time there was that room to allow Raimi to make the film that he wanted to make, and you ended up with these two spectacular superhero movies. But by the time you get to say Multiverse of Madness, I mean, oh, you can even say Spider-Man 3, but definitely by Multiverse of Madness, it's just it didn't allow for just auteurs to be able to do their thing, and which is a shame. I do think Spider-Man 3 might have broke him a little bit. That was sort of, you know, the sort of the start of the corporate, studios butting in as much as possible, and it didn't wind up all that spectacular. But that's one I would absolutely, unless you're not into it. Gets pretty hard. It's not the most hardcore film I've seen, but if you're not comfortable with gore or sort of hardcore like body horror type of things, it's probably going to bother you a little bit, so it might not be your thing. But if you like sort of general like thrillers, it's one that you could very easily put on. It's going to entertain you for a couple of hours. You're probably not going to watch it more than once, but it is going to entertain you, I think, for the time that you're at this point. If you're pulling it up on Hulu, you're gonna enjoy it. But again, not necessarily for the faint of heart. So